right? I'll give you an example. And in Assam, the gentleman who's running our campaign over there has been sending me videos of BJP candidates running around with voting machines in their cars, right? And he's screaming at the top of his voice, saying that, look, I've got a real serious problem here. But there's nothing going on in the national media. There is a wholesale capture of the institutional framework of this country. Complete. There is absolute financial dominance that the BJP has.
And I was curious, what would you prioritize in terms of policy proposals when you become Prime Minister?
I would move from just a growth-centric idea to a job-centric idea. I would say we need growth, but we're going to do everything to push production and job creation.
Rahul, welcome back. It's a great pleasure to see you back here at the Kennedy School. I want to say good afternoon to everybody watching here in the United States and North America. Good evening to all of our friends in India. And I know I've been on social media this morning. I've seen a lot of buildup for this conversation with Rahul Gandhi. I first met Rahul, I think it was during George W. Bush's state visit to India in March of 2006. We've become friends. We've seen each other in Delhi. And we were really honored to host Rahul Gandhi here at Harvard in the autumn. And I was honored to appear on his podcast last summer at the height of the pandemic. Today, we thought we'd have a conversation where I'd ask Rahul a series of questions about public service, about the crises in India, about the Congress Party, and about our bilateral relationship between India and the United States. In about 35 to 40 minutes from now, we'll transition to questions from our Harvard College and Harvard Kennedy School and Harvard University students. So Rahul, welcome. It's really good to have you back with us, albeit virtually. We'd rather have you on the campus, but at least we can have this virtual meeting. Welcome.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you to the university as well. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, Rahul. And I wanted to start with a question about public service, because the Kennedy School of Government is founded on the principle that we want our students to be involved in the public square. No matter where they're from, we want them to be involved in improving the human condition. And you obviously grew up at a unique time and in a unique family, where your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents had been so committed to your country and to the future of your country. Did you always assume when you were younger that some form of public service would be your life's work?
I think, first of all families are unique in their own way. So I guess I don't see it as a unique family. I just see it as a family that happens to go through certain things. But I grew up in that environment of public service. So from when I was small, there was this underlying thing of a sense of trying to understand India, trying to understand what is going on, trying to understand what are the forces at play, trying to understand some of these things and how they work. So in a sense, I was embedded in it, and I saw it from the beginning, from when I was small. Of course, there were certain events that sort of pushed me in a way. My father's assassination was one of them that developed that sense that I felt that my father was, in a sense, fighting particular forces, and he was wronged. And so as a son, that of course had an effect. And then also, I was brought up when I was small, from when I was young, with the idea that you cannot tolerate injustice. And that's just something that I've been trained from the beginning. If I see it, it riles me up. I get agitated, and it doesn't matter to whom the injustice is being done. So it's not that it could be an injustice done even to somebody I'm not very fond of, and that gets me going. So those are the type of things.
Thank you, Rahul. And of course, you grew up in a country that was under construction, a country that had just become independent in 1947 after colonial rule. And both of our countries, the United States and India, are grand experiments in citizen rule, in democratic rule. One thing that we try to emphasize with our students is, especially when you live in a democracy, you're responsible for what happens. And whether that's the sense of injustice that needs to be corrected and overcome, or just the commitment to make your country better and more just, that's part of the responsibility all of us have. And my next question really has to do with the extraordinary year we've been living. The reason we're virtual and you're not in Cambridge with us right now is the pandemic. I know it's been a very tough time in India with the recent spike, with a lot of suffering and infections and death. We have shared that with you. We have 552,000 Americans dead because of the coronavirus. We've struggled in the United States to have a better public response. I think we're seeing that under President Biden, a much better response. We've had the racial protests. You've had the farmer protests. We're the two most important democracies in the world. And I wanted to ask you, how does India recover? I mean, the United States has to recover as well. How do we both recover from this? But particularly in your case, with these cataclysmic events, how do you see India's path ahead?
I mean, Corona is one element of it. And of course, there is a vaccine strategy, and there's taking care of the disease itself. But I think the disease operates on a particular paradigm, it operates on a particular level of connectivity. And I think we are reaching a point where that level of connectivity is challenging certain structures of ours, certain fundamental structures. The idea of the nation state, the idea of institutions, the idea of how these interact with each other. So those things are sort of coming undone. And we have to think about a new paradigm. Of course, we can't shut down this connectivity. We have to adapt to the connectivity. But we shouldn't move into a sort of non-democratic paradigm, which is easy to do when you're operating in these circumstances. Corona is a huge opportunity, at least in India, to misuse technology, to misuse some of these ideas, to get, the lockdown is a very powerful thing. If you're thinking about controlling a large population, you've got, I mean, I've never experienced in my life a year like the one I've spent, where I assume that it is normal for me to just lock myself up. I mean, this has never happened. Maybe, I don't know, maybe in World War, during the bombing campaign, but I don't even think that was the case. So there are these new mindsets that are evolving, which are actually dangerous mindsets, and we have to guard against them. But it's going to take a lot of work. From the Indian perspective, India, as I said sometime earlier, is a negotiation. It's a negotiation between multiple ideas. And our institutional framework basically allows us to manage that negotiation. And that institutional framework is under attack. So I worry that the negotiation will break down. And if the negotiation breaks down in a country like India, then we're in very serious trouble.
And of course, you're dealing with the pandemic, but you're also dealing with these remarkable protests by the Indian people, at least from the farming community in Delhi and other major cities. How do you respond to that as a political leader and to the demands that those people are making?
It's again the the way you run the country. I remember when we were in government, we had constant feedback. It would always amaze me at how quickly our system got feedback. It was literally within days, we would get a pressure coming at us, whether it was from farmers, whether it was from laborers, whether it was from big business. There was a feedback loop. And it was what amazed me is how quick, how effective, and how powerful it was. It was right in our face. And we almost couldn't avoid it. And that feedback loop is now shut. So the model that the government uses and some of the ideas that they project has shut down that feedback loop, right? You see it in when Gauri Lankesh gets assassinated, the activist. You see it when people are beaten up. You see it when people are attacked. These are all, you're shutting down the feedback loop. And what has happened is that the government has shut the feedback loop, so the farmers have no other way except to come out onto the street. I mean, we sent messages to the leadership of the nation saying, do not do this. This is a very serious problem if you're going to do this. Our Chief Minister of Punjab wrote multiple letters saying that please have a discussion, engage with these people. And absolutely, it is important to reform agriculture, 100%. But you cannot attack the foundation of the agricultural system. And you certainly cannot do it without having a conversation with them, because they're going to react. It's the same idea of the lockdown. We do a lockdown immediately like that with no warning. We just shut the whole country down. One of the largest countries in the world, one of the most complex countries in the world, has the harshest lockdown imposed immediately. In fact, now it's come out that even the cabinet was not asked, even the other institutions were not asked. So it's a style of government. And it comes from a centralization of power and a belief that centralized power understands everything. So the ability to put your message across so forcefully when you control the media automatically stops you from listening. And it puts you in a mindset of, okay, I control the media space, I control the narrative, so I don't really need to listen to anybody. And that's how you operate. And I remember that our entire job was listening for the feedback. We would be waiting when we did something to say, okay, who's going to respond? And now what do we do? That's missing in this government. And that is the case with GST, that's the case with demonetization, that's the case with the lockdown, that's the case with the farm laws. It's a style of governance.
Thank you very much. When we had a chance to speak the other day, just to get ready for this interview, and we talked about the fact that democracies are being challenged these days by authoritarian powers, by forces within, by populism. In our country, we've gone through the most tumultuous time in my lifetime, especially on January 6th, a violent insurrection to prevent the alternates in power between a defeated candidate, Donald Trump, and a victorious candidate, Joe Biden. In your country, obviously, Congress has had a great run in government, including in the last decade, but now Congress is out. How does Congress recover its political strength? I mean, at some point, there'll be an alternates in power in India, too, the way it happens in all democracies. What kind of changes or strategic choices are you making to strengthen Congress for the political arena?
We're fighting two elections right now, right? I'll give you an example. And in Assam, the gentleman who's running our campaign over there has been sending me videos of BJP candidates running around with voting machines in their cars, right? And he's screaming at the top of his voice, saying that, look, I've got a real serious problem here. But there's nothing going on in the national media. there is a wholesale capture of the institutional framework of this country. Complete. There is absolute financial dominance that the BJP has. Right? There is absolute media dominance that the BJP has. It's not just the Congress. The BSP is not winning an election. The Samajwadi is not winning an election. The NCP is not winning an election. To fight elections, I need institutional structures. I need a judicial system that protects me. I need a media that is reasonably free. I need financial parity. I need a whole set of structures that actually allow me to operate as a political party. I don't have them. So what's the answer? The answer is that when you behave the way the BJP is behaving, a lot of people get discontented very fast. And that's what's happening. And so the answer then is to bring these people together. But to understand that we are no longer in the same paradigm we were before 2014. We're in a different paradigm. We are in a paradigm where the institutions that are supposed to protect us do not protect us anymore. The institutions that are supposed to support a fair political fight do not do so anymore. So you can say we are in a democracy, but I'll give you an example. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's app was on one of the biggest operators automatically downloaded. Now, can you imagine if in the United States, one candidate had his icon next to the iMessages icon on every single phone, and the other candidate didn't? What would you call that? That's what's happening here. Right? So there is a complete control of the system. But what's interesting to me is that the speed with which people are getting discontented is massive. It's happening very quickly. And so the opportunity for us is huge. We have to redefine ourselves, though.
This is such an important question. I would love to continue as just you and I, but I think you're going to see Joe Biden be the most pro-union and pro-middle-class president in 2 generations. Part of the answer is retraining. And as we get into a clean energy economy and a digital economy, to make sure people are retrained for those jobs. But I don't want to deprive Ryan Tierney, who's one of our students, from asking the next question. You and I can continue this. Ryan, you're next.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming, Mr. Gandhi. Much appreciated. It's been a really stimulating conversation. My question for you is about some more India-specific foreign policy, particularly about the Kashmir region. Last month, India and Pakistan reaffirmed their ceasefire agreement that they signed in 2003, but haven't always abided by in the region since then. How do you hope that India and Pakistan can kind of back away from the edge of conflict that they've been kind of inching towards for so many months, and kind of enter a new relationship that's beneficial to both countries?
I mean, they're trying, but I think it's going to be very difficult. I don't think it's going to be easy because India and Pakistan will find it very difficult to go beyond a certain space. So I find that I don't think it's going to be an easy thing, but I'm all for trying. I'm all for trying, but I don't think it's going to be easy. Particularly some of the approaches that have been taken by our government internally, and the approaches that have been taken by Pakistan. There's meeting point is not there, in my view. Yeah.
Hello, pleasure to speak with you. You've spoken about a lot of topics with the current state of affairs with India, from international affairs to economics to voting rights. And I was curious, what would you prioritize in terms of policy proposals when you become prime minister?
I would move from just a growth-centric idea to a job-centric idea. I would say we need growth, but we're going to do everything to push production and job creation and value addition, right? Currently, if you look at our growth, the type of relationship there should be between our growth and job creation, between value addition, between production is not there. The Chinese lead value addition. Nick would disagree with me, but the Chinese lead value addition. I've never met a Chinese leader who says to me he's got a job creation problem. I've never met the guy. This is astounding to me because this is the only problem we deal with, right? So we have to get on that bandwagon. Also, we have to protect, in a country like India, the minimums. So you have to put floors under people. You cannot say to people in an urban environment that, listen, we're not going to give you hospitals. Your children can't have education. So a minimum floor, and then moving the country with one, forcefully saying, okay, this is a serious challenge now, like the United States is sort of moving towards. What I like about Mr. Biden's plan is that they clearly recognize the problem, that they've understood that now there's a problem, right? That penny hasn't dropped in India. India is still fooling around and dilly-dallying and messing about and, killing people and doing all sorts of stuff that is not central to this thing. So I would say, go to our people and say, okay, now next 15, 20 years, serious value addition, serious job creation. I'm not interested in 9% economic growth if I don't see job numbers right next to it. If you give me 9% economic growth and say, oh, we don't have jobs, well, sorry, I don't like that. That doesn't work for me. So that would be the thrust of it. But putting it into a mission mode, right? Like what John F. Kennedy did. We got to go to the moon. And then the whole nation is, we got to go to the moon. So that's where we got to go. And I think that there'll be different variations of it in the United States and in India. But both those pennies have to drop together.
And to close out this proceeding, I want to ask another friend, Mark Guerin, the director of the Institute of Politics, to give us some word of hope, Mark, as we enter Easter weekend.
Well, thank you, Nick, and thank you most especially, Rahul. This has been a rich and vibrant and candid conversation, and I take hope for the kind of engagement with thoughtful questions from our students and Anika's very thoughtful introduction. So these are the kind of conversations that we pride ourselves at the Kennedy School, certainly at the Institute of Politics, that Nick has done with his diplomacy project. So we look forward, as you say, Nick, to more conversations in this. And to that regard, I invite all our listeners to two forums next week. On Wednesday, April 7th at 6 o'clock, we'll explore the issues of Jewish identity in public service, where we have freshman Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs from California and Sarah Hurwitz, graduate of the college and author and chief speechwriter to Michelle Obama. It's co-sponsored by Harvard Hillel and moderated by the IOP's own Sabrina Goldfisher. And then on Thursday, we will work in partnership with our colleagues at the Shorenstein Center and the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago on a fascinating subject of disinformation concepts, where we'll have our colleague, Dr. Joan Donovan and Roger McNamee, with this important new book, bestseller on Zuckerberg, Karen Swisher, Times contributing writer, and Shorenstein Center Director Nancy Gibbs will moderate it. So that will be on Thursday, April 8th at 6 p.m. So I leave with my gratitude to Rahul Gandhi and to Nick Burns for their very engaging conversation, to all of you for joining us, and we welcome you back next week. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
अगर आपको हमारे वीडियोस पसंद आए तो प्लीज़ लाइक करें, सब्सक्राइब करें और शेयर करें।